All right, we are live. Hey, to all the viewers and listeners, thank you guys for tuning in today. We to Elevation through Hindsight. If this is your first time listening in, want to give you a quick backstory of how all this kind of came to fruition. I've always believed that we are elevated through the stories of other people. So if I tell you a story of me overcoming some type of challenge or some type of adversity, then in a sense, that should elevate you. It should motivate you and inspire you to take just one more step. And I believe that if we can all, go through life with the mindset of just taking one more step, never quitting and never giving up, that society and the world as a whole will make more resilient people and better people. So that's why we're here. We're here to bring on guests and have them tell their story through their hindsight to elevate others. So here we are in Houston, Texas, on episode one, day one, and we're live. Got a special guest today, as you can see, scrolling through the bottom down there is Khalil. He's going to share with us his journey from Afghanistan to the United States. I got to tell you all, I'm smiling because I'm excited about his story. I'm elated to hear his story and what he has to say. So Khalil, thank you, brother, for coming on. I'm excited. I believe that our listeners and viewers today are going to gain a lot by hearing everything that you have to say. But before we start, man, I got a surprise question for you. I gotta ask you this. I've been curious. It's been bugging me. When you came to the United States, where was the first place that you ate at? And give me a quick review on how you thought the food was. Over to you.
Well, first of all, thanks, James, for having me on the podcast today. And thank you all, viewer and listeners, for tuning in and putting the time to actually listen to my story. I'm really honored to be here today with you all. About that question, the first real food that I actually had, and I want to say the first real food because um, I was here on an evening flight and picked up by a friend of mine and was brought to his house. And they, of course, he was an SIV and Afghan as well. So we ate Afghan food. That doesn't count. But I will tell you the first real food I had in mind from a long time ago, before coming to the United States and before coming to Texas and before coming to Houston,
Okay.
was that where can I get some brisket?
All right.
And
All right.
I can tell you, and to make it more surprising for the viewers, is that I was a vegetarian for 2 years before coming to the United States, and I was holding on for a long time not to break that pattern. But I voluntarily wanted to try brisket. And
Yeah.
there's a backstory to that as well. If you had the moment, I start watching this show, a sitcom that is set in a rural area in eastern Texas, and there's a family. And spoiler alert if anyone didn't see the show. There's a family, and the grandma has this amazing brisket recipe, and the son-in-law is trying to get that recipe, and he does everything he can to get that recipe, but he cannot. So
Okay.
ever since I saw that show, I was like, could not wait a moment to see what is a brisket, and I had to try it. And when I tried, boy, I went to Pinkerton, and so I asked one of my best friends, Chris Clifford, and I said, you know what, I want to try a brisket. I don't know where, because it's going to
Yeah.
be my first time. I want to try the best one in town. And so
Gotta
he
get it.
pointed, yeah, and he sent me over to Pinkerton, and boy, I never regret that decision.
So do you are you back at the vegetarian state, or you still like, I'm all in, give me a
Hell
brisket
no,
sandwich every day?
hell no. So I actually broke my oath. Never went back to vegetarian after that. I mean, it wasn't just
Yeah.
for brisket, but there was also some other elements involved. I realized I was invited for dinners, lunch at many of my Afghan friends' houses, and for some reason, everywhere I went, they had plenty of food, but 99% of them were meat based. and
Yeah.
and we have a very variety of different dishes in Afghan cuisine that are plant based and are
Hmm.
vegetarian or even vegan. But no, they just go. Well, Afghans are so hospitable that they go miles and miles out of their way to
Hmm.
make sure you feel welcomed. And that's the way they wanted to tell me, that's the way they wanted to show me their hospitality, by
That's
just
awesome.
lining up all this meat based dishes. And I honestly tried to avoid them for some time. I think it was 3 or 4 months in a row,
Uh-huh.
that I was like, no, 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 I'm not going to eat any meat. So I was eating probably like some grains of rice, some places maybe a little bit of salad, and that's it out of this
That's it.
huge like table of foods lined up. And I remember going out, I would just always go and get Subway, because there was a couple types of sandwiches that I could go and
Yeah.
get. Um, but then I realized, okay, this is not gonna work.
Yeah. That
Not
that
at
that's
least
not
not in
it.
Texas. At least not in Texas.
Definitely not in Texas. Definitely not in Texas. So you know what, Khalil? It ain't even your fault. Like out of obligation and just respect, you didn't really break your oath. I mean, you just you just playing the party line. You're doing what's normal. So, hey, I get it, man. I had much of a similar experience about brisket, and like I told you before we started here today, moved from Hawaii, and all I've been hearing about is the Texas brisket, the Texas brisket. And the first place I stop at is Bucky's, and I'm like, it can't be that good. Like I'm a Georgia boy. Like what? And I bit into it, and it was like, oh man, like this is life changing. Like
Right, right.
I'm full in now. I've been looking up recipes, and absolutely feel what you're saying about brisket, man. So that's funny. Thank you for sharing that with us, brother.
And for me, it wasn't just food, or it wasn't just the taste of it. It wasn't just how it tastes or how it fulfills you. But it was, for me, it was a cultural experience.
Hmm.
I remember the first semester in undergraduate program. I had a course with a Fulbright professor coming from Chicago in Poland. It was food and culture, and we studied how food can endorse or how food can uplift cultural unity, how food can be part of your cultural identity, how
Hmm.
food can be, a style. So there are so many elements that are presented in food. And for me, food is not just a way to nourish you, but it's also a cultural expression.
Yeah.
And I wanted to dive deep into the culture here in Texas by trying that food, because I knew
Hmm.
it was a very unique thing. It's very unique to Texas, unique to this area. And I could not just forgive myself being in Texas, living in Texas, not actually being able to try that. So I
Yeah.
wanted to try it as soon as I could get my hands on a brisket.
I got you, man. Hey, embracing the culture, man. We won't spend this whole time talking about food, but I think you're spot on because we use the term a lot, breaking bread together, and just that symbolism around
Exactly.
sitting around a table and sharing a meal. It's kind of like barriers are let down, folks let their guard down, and you're eating and you're laughing, you're talking, and in that moment, relationships are built, bonds
Absolutely.
are made, walls are torn down. So there is definitely some power in that. So Khalil, what can
Absolutely.
you tell us, man, about growing up in Afghanistan and your journey from the way you grew up to where you are now?
So I was born and raised in Herat, which is west of Afghanistan near the Iranian border. And I I was born in the middle of the war, 1986, where I was born. My dad was asked for reserve. He had to flee Afghanistan, went to Iran, where I was 6 months old. My mom and ourselves, we followed suit, and we stayed in Iran for probably 5 or 6 years. And when the Mujahideen took over, when the Soviet government was collapsed, or the Soviet collapsed, we returned to Afghanistan. And I lived pretty much my entire life after that in Herat, Afghanistan, and I went to school there. Obviously, experienced war ever since I was born, and finished high school in 2004. And in that year, I actually met a Polish backpacker in Herat, where we befriended. We clicked like as soon as we
Yeah.
met. For the
Gotcha.
it was for the first time I met a foreigner,
Hmm.
especially a stranger, looking different, blonde, blue eyes, pale.
Yeah.
So we had a lot to talk about, and I invited him over to my house, and we clicked right away, and we exchanged contact information. I didn't even have an email back then. I didn't even know what internet was. He gave me his email, and 6 months later, I finished my high school, or maybe a bit longer than that. I finished my high school, and I was working as a plumber, as a
Okay.
part-time plumbing shop in Herat. And we actually got asked by one of these subcontractors to survey a site that later on become an police academy. So it was
Okay.
actually the first police academy outside the city of Kabul, and we built that. I was working as a plumber there. We built the infrastructure there in that camp, and I was soon approached by an American who later became the site coordinator, coordinating the efforts, running that site, and he asked me to join them and work for them as a full-time plumber. I think I was 19 or maybe less than 19 years old.
Hmm.
I said, yeah, sure, why not? And 2 months later, I signed a contract with them for a year, and my English was barely existing. I mean, it was almost non-existing, and I learned English within that year as a plumber.
Oh, wow.
And I was observed by pretty much all the Americans on site, whether they were advisors or mentors, because that site become the first police academy. We call them Herat Regional Training Center, and they've
Okay.
been observing my activity, ever since everyone was stepping on that site. And in a year, I was offered to work as an interpreter. I was blown away. I was like, I don't think if I can do that. And they're like, oh, trust me, we've been watching you for the entire time, and you've been doing that pretty much all this time, knowing or not knowingly. I mean, consciously or unconsciously. And that was true, because I
Yeah.
remember those days when I was on site plumber. That means I had to stay in the camp 24/7. And there were
Okay.
times they would knock on my door at 2 o'clock in the morning. Hey, Khalil, there's a guy probably has a headache, or some sort of problems, and they wanted to see a medic, and we had an American medic on site. Hey, can you
Okay.
help? Because they couldn't communicate. And so that's
Yeah.
how I started working as an interpreter, and I worked pretty much over 5 years up until 2010, when our family received a threatened letter from the Taliban, and that
Mm.
pretty much forced me to flee Afghanistan. And that Polish friend, later I start contacting him, and we stayed in contact, and he came back to Afghanistan in 2007. That Polish friend came to my rescue and basically
Wow.
saved my life. So with his help, I managed to obtain a Polish visa, actually a Schengen visa, and I moved to Europe, where I sought asylum. I was
Okay.
given asylum. Beginning of 2011, I arrived in Poland, and I applied for asylum. And it took a year or probably 18 months to actually safeguard asylum there. But as soon as I moved in, I started looking around, and I enrolled into the University of Jagiellonski, which is one of the oldest university in Poland, and actually one of the oldest university in the world. And this is where I started studying my bachelor's degree. And fast forward, in 2013, I decided to apply for the special immigrant visa, SIV.
Hmm.
And that's because my brother was already in the process, and he was planning to come to the United States. I decided to apply for it, and in October of 2019, I was awarded the special immigrant visa. My visa was approved, and I flew into the United States on December 6th, 2019, and
Wow.
moved to
That's a
Houston.
quite a long process, right? So from 13 all the way up until 19, you're in Poland. You're in college, getting that good old secondary education, and it wasn't until 2019 we can actually continue on with that. Wow. Okay. I had no
Exactly, and
idea
then
it was
this
that
is
long.
exactly, and this is actually one of the challenges. So I was pretty fortunate to be in Europe. I was pretty fortunate to be in the safety and the comfort of living in a European country, and having privilege of studying in one of the top universities in the world.
Hmm.
So I can consider myself pretty lucky. It did take a lot of hard work to actually get there and to enroll and to meet all the requirements, but I was privileged to be in there at that time. And you're right on. It took me 6 years, and imagine some Afghans were not so
Mm.
and so fortunate to be outside Afghanistan, and they had to wait that long in Afghanistan for the process
And
to
that's what
be
I was
ready.
thinking about, because during that time period, like you said, you were fortunate enough, right, to be in Poland. But another person may spend that entire time as they wait in Afghanistan, still dealing with the threat, of insurgents, which brings along the threat of insurgency and bad things happening to their family. Like, man, that's a lot of pressure. That's a lot
We
of pressure.
we actually helped the family in June. So let me go a little bit further. So in 2019, I moved here, and I'm actually going through the resettlement process. And someone told me, and so in Europe, I was doing a lot of volunteer work with nonprofit organizations, especially in the field of refugee services
Hmm.
and immigration. So I had some experience, I had some knowledge, I knew language. So I asked people around, hey, do you know any nonprofit here that I can volunteer with? And they pointed at Combined Arms. Hey, there's this organization called Combined Arms, and you can go and volunteer with them. And I got introduced to Combined Arms, and I met Chris Clippard, which was the SIV and Allies community leader at that
Hmm.
time. And he took me in. He made me feel welcomed, and again, we we created this amazing bond, friendship, and ever since I was volunteering with Combined Arms up until November of 2021, when they offered me to work as a full-time employee, manage the SIV and Allies program,
Yeah.
which I'm so proud to be part of, which I'm so proud to actually be doing right now. And so right at this time, um, it was probably June, or maybe June or July of last year. We had this family that the principal applicant, or the head of the household, the father of the family, was an Afghan interpreter working for the U.S. forces. and he was awaiting visa, or he was awaiting his SIV process, or his SIV application for
Okay.
10 years. For
Wow.
10 years. And and he eventually got approved. So the first stage is to get COM approval, chief of mission approval. He got his COM approval after 10 years, only to live 2 more months and or 3 more months, and he was assassinated by the Taliban in
Wow.
front of his 10-year-old son. And his family were just left out there with no options, and we had to step up, combine arms, help them get humanitarian parole, and get them to the United States. So imagine,
Wow.
it took 10 years for him and his family, and he couldn't even outlive that process. That is
Man.
so sad.
And that's real life. That's truth. That it's taking a decade for that process to happen. And like you alluded to, man, like you said, for him to not really be able to see that through. Um, yeah, that's absolutely heartbreaking. That's
And
heartbreaking.
it
I
wasn't the
wish.
only case, and he wasn't the only case.
Yeah.
And we had number of people who were actually not able to outlive that process.
Wow.
That they perished because we could not get them out on time. And there's still a great number of those people in Afghanistan left behind, desperately trying to find a way to get help to get out.
Hmm. Definitely not an easy conversation. Not an easy conversation to think about another human being trying to escape something so terrible, and trying to get them and their family out. And I like to believe that as a father and as a husband myself, that anybody, any man, would take whatever measure necessary to get their family to safety. So to hear that he didn't get that really is heartbreaking. But what I am glad about is that organizations like Combined Arms and people like you are still fighting that good fight. Khalil, when I hear your story, man, it's so inspiring to hear how a job as a plumber, and there was no way that when you took that job, there was no way you had any way of knowing that this job would eventually lead to not only you escaping Afghanistan and insurgency, but it would then put you in a position to help other people to escape. And I think about the old saying, when I was growing up, my grandmother would always say, "It takes a village." And I would always wonder, like, what are you talking about? It takes a village. Well, what she was trying to get me to understand was that in this life, there are certain people that we'll just meet randomly. We'll just meet. They'll come along and they'll help. And they were meant for our lives at that time, at that purpose. So when I think about that guy that you met, in Poland, somebody that looks
Exactly,
different
right?
from a different
Exactly.
culture, like there is no real reason you guys should have just clicked like that, but you did because it was meant to happen and it was meant to be a part of a greater purpose. And then you go on to college in Texas and Combined Arms, and now you're doing what I call paying it forward. Like you didn't just, hey, I got my bag and I'm running, I'm good. Like, nah, man, your occupation right now is to help other people. And to me, in my book, that's how we define a hero. That's absolutely commendable. So I applaud you for that.
I don't know if I actually, if I can call myself a hero. But I really appreciate that. The thing is that when there is always, so I remember reading back in time when I was younger. I was reading a lot on motivational psychology, and one of the things I read was that you you will not stop growing. You grow every day by learning something new, by doing something. And if you ever felt like you've been not able to grow any further, that's the end of you. as a human
Mm-hmm.
being. And so for me, helping others is actually one way of growing. And it's not because today is my job. Like I said, ever since I left Afghanistan, I decided to step up and do the work because I have been there. I have been
Yes.
there when the Taliban actually threatened my life. I have been there when my mom, my belated mom, had a heart attack because she realized she just lost a son, because she knew that I left the country and I will never be able to go back. And I could not go back for a decade. Um, I knew how it feels to just grab your backpack and the only thing you can save is a backpack, a pair of clothes and a pair of shoes. And I lost family, friends, a job, my entire life's saving, my entire life's memory. I had to leave
Mm.
everything behind, and I knew how it feels. And when I had the chance to actually do something, sometime your pain can be transformed into a tools that you can help others not to suffer through the same pain. And I realized that my experience, my background is painful, but instead of sitting down and whining about it, I can just take that, transform it, and use it as a tool to make other people's life better. And I'm committed to do that. I have been doing it for a while, and I'm committed to do that no matter it's a formal job or even if it was a volunteer opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
I had a call to go to Greece when I was in Poland, and I went to probably one of the hottest location on planet Earth to support Afghan refugees. I went to Lesbos, which is an island in Greece, and Samos, two of the notorious islands that had the most number of refugees in one place. It was one of the
Okay.
most overcrowded camps, and I could not believe my eyes. I could not believe my ears. The magnitude of suffering, the extent of the the challenges people were facing while
Mm.
there. And I volunteered to go and help because they were short in staff. They did not have enough interpreters. I knew the language, I knew the culture. And so I took that call upon myself and went there purely to help because I
Yeah.
knew how important it is for those people to have an eyes, an ear, and they be able
Mm-hmm.
to have a language. So I
Yeah.
become their eyes and ears, and I become their language, and that I become the way they could communicate with the rest of the world. So I agree with you. I mean, this is heartbreaking, but it is very vital. It is very important, and I'm really glad to be part of this process and be able to make an impact on other people's life. But I do not call myself a hero at all.
I'll tell you, Khalil, I heard a quote, man, that said, the only thing that it takes for evil to prevail is for good men to do nothing. And so when I look out, right, if I can kind of canvas and landscape all the men in the world, it's like, man, a few of these dudes got to step up. Somebody has to step up, risk it all, take it on their own to do something for somebody else. And when I look at you and your story, that's what I see. I see a man who decided to step up, to look back, and lend out a helping hand. And like I said earlier, I mean, I'm at a loss for words because that is absolutely commendable. I believe it's something that we don't see enough of in this day and age. You know, we so many times it can be easy to kind of get selfish and feel ungrateful and take what we have and consider ourselves, set and just move on to the next thing without looking back and think, you know what, I was that guy or that girl at one point in my life. And I'm going to pay it forward by reaching back and helping somebody out. So I am elated, man, that we have people like you that's doing that. And I know those folks are too. And I see it, Khalil, as a spider web, right? So the same way you reach back and help somebody else out, let's say you reach back and you bring 10 people over and you help them out. Well, statistically speaking, I have to believe that out of those 10, at least 3 of them will do the same. And then
Yes.
those 3 will help 30. And out of those 3, and, that math continue. And that's how we continue to get better as a world. Forget a city or a state. That's how we get better as a world. Demonstrating compassion and empathy and just being willing to help. So kudos to you, brother.
And
Good on you.
thank you so much. And I think I have, for a big part, I have my parents and my family and my upbringing to thank for that. And I wish my mom would have been alive to see this. She passed away 6 weeks after Taliban took over Kabul. Like I say, my mom had a heart attack when I left Afghanistan, and it took me a decade to go back. By the time the Taliban took over Kabul, she realized that she not just only lost me, but also my younger brother who moved to Houston as well in 2017. She realized she lost 2 sons, and that broke her heart, and
Yeah.
she could not endure it. She passed away 6 weeks after the Taliban took over. And if I could do pay the gratitude, it will be to her and the way she actually brought me up, because
Yeah.
she always taught me that you know no matter what, and no matter what conditions you live in, you always look down and you can find people who are living worse and they're worse off, and you can always help them. If you have a hand that you can extend to help them and you know get them up, do that.
Yeah.
And this is basically what I'm doing. I'm just listening to what she told me, and what she taught me, and
Hmm.
doing what exactly she said. And
Well,
I
that's
hope,
awesome.
that this will make the life of some people a bit easier. I hope.
That's awesome, man. I can't see, Khalil, how anybody could hear your story and not be inspired. I mean, it no kidding makes me look at right now the days when I say, man, I'm tired. I'm too tired to help somebody. I'm too tired to do this. I'm too tired to pick up the phone and call and check up on a brother or a sister or assist anybody. And I'm like, man, Khalil did it. Like, what if Khalil said, what if you said, I'm too tired to go back and help somebody else out? Though there'll be families that are still stuck right now and not having a chance at a better life. But you didn't do that. You persevered. You took that extra step. So that motivates me, and I have to believe that it motivates our listeners and our viewers today as well. Do you know what? Khalil did it. I'm going to take one more step, and that's the whole thing. If we can all just take one more step, the world's going to be a better place because
And
of people
and
like
and
you.
I think this is going to be something I wanted to actually close it on. The word of advice is to, if we all go through pain, we all have our own pain. We have two choices. We can sit down and whine about it, that why we are in pain, what happened, or we can just literally transform that pain into a tool and make sure no one else goes through that pain. Or if someone is in that pain right that moment, we can help them relieve that pain and help them to actually get up and move on. So the choice is ours. And I decided to do the latter, and I really recommend, this is the only advice I can give anyone, is to, you can transform your pain into a tools that you can make other people's life easier, and God knows how it feels. God knows how it
Man,
feels, because I cannot even describe that feeling.
Khalil, there is no better way to end this than on that note. That
Thank you so
that
much.
is that is perfect. That should be on every T-shirt, bumper sticker, and in the heart of everybody around the world. If we all felt like that, the world would be a better place. Once again, brother, thank you for coming on. Much appreciated. And to the listening viewers and the viewers, I hope you all gained something from the day. Share this story. And that's all we got. We're out.
Thank you so much, James, for having me. And thanks everyone for listening.
Absolutely. I'll be in touch, brother. Thank you.
Thank you. God bless you.